There is a narrative that persists in the XRP community and refuses to go away. It has been talked about on forums, debated in private Discord channels, and examined in macro finance groups. To be honest, it has become one of the most intriguing legends in all of crypto. The tale of the ghost is told here. He was a co-founder and the silent architect who wielded such power that it played a role in establishing the basic foundation of the XRP ledger. However, he made the decision to remain out of the public eye. Elusive is his presence, Arthur Brito is his name, and his contributions are significant. Today, the mythos that surrounds him has expanded to encompass a much larger scope. The concept that XRP was never intended to be a straightforward digital asset, was never intended to be a retail speculation token, was never intended to be traded in a casual manner or to be treated as if it were simply another cryptocurrency experiment. On the other hand, the idea that XRP was meant to fulfill a certain function is a theory that is becoming more and more convincing with each passing year, an objective that necessitates a valuation that is astronomically greater than any that have been witnessed in the realm of digital finance throughout history. A goal that, as community lore would have it, makes a price tag of $10,000 not just feasible but also needed from a structural standpoint. Arthur Brito's status as the silent participant in the original design discussions for the XRP ledger is the starting point for the mystery. Brito was working behind the scenes on a number of different projects while other people were stepping into the public eye. Some of the projects included architecture, throughput, global scalability, and settlement procedures. The projects were designed with institutions in mind rather than hobbyists. People knew him as a very detail-oriented individual who was concerned with scale and who was always fixated on the issue that would determine the future of finance for the next 100 years. How does one construct a system that has the potential to shift value for each and every human being that walks the planet? That question formed the heart of the XRP ledger, and it is this precise question that led to the invention of the now famous hypothesis, which states that XRP's price had to be high, extraordinarily high, in order for the ledger to play its intended role in global liquidity, not due to the hoopla, but rather because of mathematics. Brito is believed to have made the following statement in the past. Whether it was spoken in secret, written in early documents, or merely repeated through community interpretation, XRP must be high in price in order to function, nor due to conjecture, nor due to feelings, but rather because a global liquidity token requires substantial worth in order to process the flow of global capital. The world economy is on the move, shifting trillions of dollars on a daily basis. Every day, flows across borders exceed hundreds of billions. And in the event that a neutral bridge asset were to be used in order to settle transactions for 7.5 billion people, it would be necessary for that asset to have enough liquidity, be valuable enough, and be sturdy enough to sustain that volume without any lag, fragmentation, or instability. The asset would also need to be supported by banks, businesses, governments, and on-chain CBDCs. The theory came about in this manner. XRP was not created with the intention of reaching a value of $1, $5, or even $100. The design itself is an indication of a world in which the token is capable of supporting global flows on a large scale. It is from this capability, rather than from hype, that the XRP community researchers believe the $10,000 figure comes, which is derived from engineered liquidity requirements. We will take a closer look at that concept today. The notion that the present price of XRP is not the natural price, but rather a manufactured aberration, has been denied, ridiculed, and ignored by mainstream commentators. A distortion that is a result of market immaturity, regulatory ambiguity, institutional hesitancy, and legal challenges. Proponents of this theory make the case that the ledger will need to make corrections to its intended value once the fog clears, and global systems ultimately require real-time liquidity for the world's financial infrastructure. And they claim that, when that happens, the number must be sufficiently large to be able to manage the volume of settlements that are occurring on a worldwide scale. In accordance with this legendary co-founder design narrative, $10,000 is not hype. Rather, it represents the mathematically necessary liquidity threshold for settlement on a worldwide scale. Speculation is further fueled by the story of Brito. Brito stayed out of the public eye, concentrating on architecture instead of achieving celebrity, which is different from the actions of the other co-founders who made public appearances. It was reported that his vision was of a long-term character, that it was focused on institutions in the first place, and that it spanned several decades. Those who research the early Ripple documents typically note that the inventors of Ripple frequently talked about global banks, enormous liquidity pools, corridors of international finance, and the replacement of obsolete settlement systems that connect every economy on the planet. The purpose of this endeavor was not to be driven by a bull run or a meme, but rather to absorb and move energy from the global financial system. Furthermore, Brito's theory, as interpreted by the community, suggests that it is impossible to accomplish that with a $1 asset. You will not be able to provide service to trillions with only a small amount of money. In order to ensure that the settlement process is quick, stable, and dependable, you must maintain a tremendous amount of value for each token. The film continues its investigation of the architecture that makes up XRP itself. The fact that XRP has a finite supply, the cheap cost of its transactions, and the fact that it can be settled in a matter of seconds all indicate that the system is optimized for transactions that involve a large amount of money, according to analysts. Therefore, this is not really about speculative trading or micropayments. We are talking about big institutional flows here. We are talking about money for governments, money for banks, and money for global business. This perspective really adds even more fuel to the fire of the $10,000 idea. This is because, if you take liquidity modeling into consideration, a bridge asset with a fixed supply would need to attain a significantly high price in order to sustain worldwide settlement without requiring unreasonable quantities of locked capital. The fact of the matter is that it does not really matter whether or not that figure is precisely 10,000. What is actually important to note is that the system appears to have been developed specifically for an environment that has a high value. And now, the most interesting aspect of this entire mythology is the following: the discrepancy between what was originally planned in the design and what is actually taking place at present moment. Those who support the notion claim that the low price of XRP at the moment is merely a temporary situation that is mostly a result of early adoption, legal obstacles, and indeed, the uncertainty that surrounds the world at this time. According to the experts, the moment that the world makes the switch to CBDCs, tokenized assets, and digital commodity trading systems, there is going to be an increase in demand for a neutral bridge asset. If XRP is selected as the asset, whether that is done directly by organizations or indirectly through the capabilities of the XRP ledger, its price will have to adjust in order to maintain the liquidity that is necessary. As such, the legend does not consider this alteration to be a random occurrence. In reality, it is the adjustment made to Brito's strategic plan for the future. The price is transformed into a function, and the function in turn requires a value. As the tale progresses, audiences are introduced to the symbolic and psychological significance of the story about the ghost co-founder. The fact that Brito does not make any public appearances serves to increase the sense of mystery surrounding him, resulting in a legendary atmosphere over his accomplishments. The notion that an anonymous architect secretly placed a long-term design objective within the XRP ledger is not presented as a fact that has been confirmed, but rather as a piece of community lore that carries emotional and symbolic significance. It serves to inspire XRP holders, fuel speculation, and frankly, it imbues XRP with a sense of destiny. In addition, regardless of whether the statement that XRP was built for $10,000 was ever made in a literal sense, the architecture itself is sufficient to support the claim. The remainder of the film extends the investigation of global settlement systems, liquidity modeling, cross-border throughput, and the mathematical reasoning behind high-value bridge assets, as you are aware. It provides an in-depth examination of the distinctive features of XRP and makes comparisons between them and those of other digital assets. It examines the possibility of a future in which central bank digital currencies become prevalent around the globe, where tokenized assets require immediate settlement, where global liquidity becomes totally digital, and in which future, the concept of XRP continuing to be an asset with a low value becomes impossible to imagine. The tale claims that the ghost co-founder was fully aware of what he was doing. The ledger was constructed to be scalable, and the system was established with the intention of moving the financial energy of the entire planet. At the conclusion, the audience is subjected to the complete force of the theory that costs $10,000. As a vision, rather than a prognosis,